If you have a hard time with boundaries, how might your life be different if you could say no as easily as a joyful yes? I'm Love Coach Mariya, and for over a decade now, I've been encouraging folks to empower their compassion so it's big enough for ourselves as well as others, and so our boundaries can become healthier than ever. You're listening to Empower Your Compassion, and on this show, we'll be unlocking transformative insights to help you reconnect to your true yes, so you can say no from that more expansive energy and get more of what you want in your relationships and your life without sacrificing your compassion. Are you ready for more love? Let's grow. You know, there really is a lot of misunderstanding and confusion about boundaries. My friend Alina and I were just talking about it yesterday. It's just this unfortunate stumbling block to real understanding and progress because there's so much misunderstanding and confusion about boundaries. Take, for example, oftentimes when I introduce myself as a boundaries coach, people will back up and say like, "Oh, I'm sorry, am I crossing a boundary?" Of course, I don't correct them on the spot, but the first thing that comes to my mind is, "Oh, you think my boundaries are your responsibility." Of course, I understand that my boundaries are my responsibility, and therefore it's not up to them. It's up to me. If I felt like they were in my space, it's my job to say that. But so many folks have this experience of getting in trouble for crossing other people's unspoken boundaries because so many people think that it's the other person's job to respect their own boundaries rather than their responsibility to communicate about and honor their boundaries. Those sort of psychic games are some of the things that lead to experiences like walking on eggshells. And then we have all our notions about politeness, and there's a lot of unfortunate overlap between being polite and what I call misplaced responsibility. And one common way that shows up is this framework of thinking where we say, "I'm not responsible for my feelings. You are. You made me feel this way." And also, "You're not responsible for your feelings. I am. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I upset you." And this leads to just a lot of unnecessary suffering and strife in our relationships. What's more productive is appropriate personal responsibility coupled with interpersonal accountability. When you have both of those, you have relational synergy. But let me break it down a little bit. We are each responsible for ourselves and accountable to each other. To take that a little bit further, we can break down the word responsibility as in response ability, the ability to respond as opposed to react. This is an ability we each have. Some of us have put time and effort into cultivating and strengthening it. Others maybe haven't even acknowledged it yet, but you can't ability for someone else. So one helpful way to differentiate between what's mine and what's yours in terms of responsibility is this within my ability to respond? And I would say the three main areas for that are our emotional experiences, our choices, and our outcomes. At the end of the day, we're the only ones who can have our emotional experiences, so it's our responsibility to manage them. We're also really the only ones who can make the choices that we have presented to us in our lives. Sometimes I'll see in movies, someone will say, "Oh, I didn't have a choice." And every once in a while, you'll see their counterpart say, "Oh, but you did." Even if that choice was death, it's still a choice. Obviously, that's an extreme example, but it makes my point. And whatever outcomes happen from our choices, we have to deal with them. We can try and blame other people, but it's still on us to respond. And in a similarly unavoidable fashion, I like to think of accountability as being held to account, and not necessarily by another person, but just by the forces of the universe, much like cause and effect. So if I yell at you and you get upset and yell back, that's how the accounting shakes out. You can try to hold me accountable with things like guilt, shame, extortion, punishment, incentives. I can claim accountability by recognizing my role in that cause and effect exchange. But the accountability happens one way or another. In more mature relationships, we take personal responsibility for our emotional experiences, our choices, and our outcomes. And we also take interpersonal accountability for the impact that we have on one another. And it's a delicate balance and kind of a fine line, but this is basically where repair comes in. If I say something that upsets you, and it wasn't my intention to upset you, it doesn't really do a whole lot of good to lead with arguing that your upset wasn't my intention. It's best for me to just take accountability for the impact and say, I'm so sorry that you were upset by this. Tell me how it's impacting you. Hold space, receive, validate, and then maybe say, I really hear you, and that makes total sense. And it wasn't really my intention. Here is actually what I was going for. But you got to start with that connection, and that gets into the whole realm of repair. So now, circling back to politeness, I actually saw a fun clip the other day of some of the actors from the Gilded Age. I don't know if anyone out there watches it. I really enjoy it. It's a great show. And because of the nature of the show, it's set, of course, during the Gilded Age, which is the late 1800s. It's set in New York, and there's, of course, a lot of social etiquette and constraints. And so someone thought it would be fun to sort of get the actors' takes on politeness in certain scenarios. And I noted a few of them that definitely fell within the realm of boundaries. One of them was, you're on a plane and you have your desired seat, whether it be a window or an aisle, and someone asks for you to switch so they can sit next to their travel companion, but then it means you would be in a middle seat. One of the actresses was like, no. It was a hard boundary for her. She was like, I will not give up my seat for a middle seat. Never. And that's perfectly acceptable. You're well within your rights to have a boundary around not being available to sit in a middle seat. And I just want to throw in a little, permission to anyone who feels like they would definitely struggle in that instance. In the previous episode, my friend Alina and I talked about the problems of empathy without boundaries, and a lot of what came up was the rescuing pattern. And one of the biggest disservices we do when we try to rescue people from their mistakes or, the wonderful opportunities to learn through life's lessons is that we rob them of those when we go in to rescue them. Most people in most circumstances are best served by allowing them to fail to some extent. Obviously, if we're talking real harm, some intervention is appropriate, and that can get blurry in terms of where that line is drawn. But certainly an instance of not being able to sit with your travel partner because you didn't plan ahead, or maybe circumstances changed and maybe you just kind of got to let it ride. Maybe it would be a good opportunity to spend a little bit of time apart, have some alone time to reflect on whatever might be going on in your life. If you don't want to give up your seat and they don't get to sit together, it's not the end of the world. And whatever you're doing, whatever gifts you have to give to the world are going to be better served by nourishing yourself and honoring the things that help you feel resourced rather than depleted. I think alignment is really important. And for two things to be aligned, they both have to be in alignment. So if it's not aligned for one thing, it's not aligned. There is no alignment there. So in this case, if it's not aligned for you to go sit in a middle seat, that's not an aligned solution. And by you not stepping out of your alignment, you create an opportunity for a more aligned solution to present itself. It may or may not, but we are not masters of the universe. We can do what we can do. The second scenario of politeness that I noted was when you're reaching out to a friend and they're not responding, but you see that they're online. There were a few different responses from the actresses, but what I noticed there was that was a boundary on the friend's part. And in my estimation, developing healthy boundaries is not just learning how to identify, communicate, and honor our own boundaries, but also respect other people's boundaries. And for the same reasons, we honor our boundaries so that we can show up resource for the people and causes we care most about. And when we respect other people's boundaries, It's a way to appreciate their self-care. Oftentimes when a friend of mine declines an invitation or backs out of an engagement, I usually say something like, "Thanks for taking care of my friend." And I further appreciate the fact that every time my friends say no, it demonstrates to me that they're comfortable saying no, which means that I can trust that their yes is sincere. So when they show up, I know that they want to be there, and I don't have to worry about them overgiving and becoming resentful later when I didn't know. I just assumed if they said yes that they were a yes, and that if they joined me in something, it was because they wanted to be there. But I can absolutely trust it when they say no when they need to. And it also creates an air of safety for me to be able to say no as well without worrying too much about their feelings getting hurt, because I understand that they are fluent in boundaries. And a third scenario for politeness that came up was you're at a restaurant and your dinner guest is being rude. And a small variety of responses were discussed. Ultimately, though, I think what's most important is how you navigate that relationship moving forward. Of course, there's a lot of different variables there, like is this a first date, second date, third date, old friend, family member, husband? There's all kinds of different scenarios, but assuming that it's someone you don't know very well and you are surprised by their behavior and a little embarrassed by their rudeness, I say navigate that in the moment, however you feel comfortable. And if it's really making you uncomfortable overall, you can leave early if you need to, or you can at the end of it just say, "This was great. I don't really feel like we're aligned and I wish you all the best." And you don't have to explain it because it's probably not going to do any good, and it would most likely be a waste of your energy to try and educate them on proper etiquette if they don't know by now. And one of my favorite things to do when someone challenges your decision or asks you to explain something that you don't really feel like explaining, it's just to flip it around. If they say, "Oh, I don't understand. I thought this was going so well. Why are you cutting this off?" And to that, I might just say, "I'm sorry that you're having a hard time with this, but I really do wish you the best." And that's it. You can still be compassionate, considerate, and boundaried. Learning boundaries is hard all on its own, and it's made even harder by the fact that there are so many misconceptions out there about what boundaries are, how they work, how we communicate about them. And for this reason, I have become a boundaries coach. I have been coaching for 10 years. I haven't always been focused on boundaries, but that has been my area of focus for the past 2 to 3 years, because there are a lot of coaches out there who will incorporate boundaries into what they teach. But I've only seen one who I think is just a boundaries coach, and I feel like there's room for more coaches to just focus on boundaries. It's that important and it's that confusing, and it doesn't need to be. So kudos to you for tuning into my podcast and learning a little bit more about healthy boundaries. I'm sure I haven't made it all clear in this one episode, but if you're not already subscribed, please do so. This is episode 15 of this podcast. I have lots of other material on my YouTube channel, but you can go back even through the previous episodes of this podcast. I've already spent 15 weeks unpacking all of the misconception and confusion about boundaries and helping to provide a lot of tools to make it easier. That being said, learning all of this information is a great first step, but the next step is integrating it, and having a coach can really be helpful with that. I know that the holidays aren't super close just yet, but they are coming up, and they tend to be big sources of stress, and a lot of that has to do with excessive expectations and obligations. We tend to overextend ourselves with poor boundaries, aka flimsy fences, and then get really depleted and resentful and maybe even throw up some spiked walls. So laying your foundations before you need them is a great way to go into the holiday season more resourced, with more self-love, and with better tools for self-regulation, and you might just have a more peaceful Thanksgiving. So if you would like to get started, please go to explorelovingboundaries.com. You can grab a spot on my calendar for a free call. We'll just have a conversation. I'll learn a little bit more about your situation and offer some solutions. Whether or not it's working with me directly, I also have a lot of other resources I'm happy to share. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please subscribe and spread the love too. Share this with anyone else you think might enjoy it, and reach out anytime. Wherever you're at on your journey, I send you love and courage. Namaste.